It's Monday, August 18th, and Hurricane Erin is about to start re-strengthening. And we can see right here on infrared satellite that Erin is about to complete its eye wall replacement cycle. This has been the thing which has caused that big decrease in strength over the last day. But now we are about to start see it re-strengthen as it completes this eye wall replacement cycle and really starts to get organized again. Another thing is that it has increased in size dramatically. So this means a couple of things. This means that areas which weren't really expecting to see that much impacts, possibly North Carolina, could get some wind and rain from this storm and definitely some very large waves. But that would be pretty much all we're expecting to see in the coast of North Carolina. As we can see, the track is pretty much set in stone at this point. Erin will pretty much cut perfectly through this corridor between Bermuda and the US, and it will not make landfall in any of these places. But definitely because the storm will be very, very large at this point, I wouldn't be surprised to see some wind and pretty strong rain in coastal North Carolina when Erin makes its pass around Wednesday night. And then in the short term, areas like the Bahamas are actually under a tropical storm warning. So definitely some tropical storm impacts to the Bahamas from Erin starting pretty much this morning. And then in that track of Erin is going to be some of the warmest sea surface temperatures it has seen yet, which is why I do think we definitely will start to see a re-intensification trend. How strong will it get? That's kind of unsure at this point, but at least up to re-intensifying to Category 4 strength should be expected. I don't really think we're going to see that rapid intensification like we saw where it dropped 80 millibars in 24 hours, but the sea surface temperatures are going to be very good. The shear is going to be pretty favorable for intensification, and moisture is not going to be an issue at all. And before we wrap up this segment on Erin, I do want to say that the only thing really guaranteed to see in the US are some very large waves, potentially in that 15-foot region, and then some strong rip currents. So if you're a surfer, you're going to be very excited because this will be a historical swell, but if you're just a regular beachgoer, probably best to stay out of the water. Then on top of Erin, we do once again have a risk of severe weather out here in the central to lower northern plains, and then also into parts of the Midwest today. And this is going to be mostly fueled by the conditional threat for some 60-mile-an-hour damaging winds. I do think some winds in the 60 to 70-mile-an-hour range will be in play today for sure, and this will cover our entire marginal risk area. And our hail risk is going to be pretty much only confined to the Great Plains risk area, and in this area we could potentially see some hail in that 1 to 2 inch in diameter range. And although the SPC has not highlighted a specific tornado risk area, I do think there is a small chance of seeing a couple of weak spin-up tornadoes in front of a line of storms in front of our plains risk area, then also down here in northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin. And then today there is a decent risk of flash flooding in that southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois area. We could potentially see 2 to 4 inches of rainfall in that site risk area. Then we have a lot of widespread, kind of spread out marginal risk areas, which would be for that conditional threat of 1 to 2 inches of rain. One is going to be in southern Louisiana, central Florida. Another one along a lot of the Atlantic coast all the way up until pretty much Washington, D.C. Another one out here in the Central Plains, and lastly in the desert Southwest. And then that heat dome brought by a big, strong high pressure system over the lower Mississippi River Valley is going to continue to be really strong, pretty much anywhere from Florida, some of the southeastern Gulf Coast states, eastern Texas, and the lower Mississippi River Valley, even a little bit further up into the Midwest, is going to see hundreds, feels like temperatures, with really a focus on that eastern Texas, lower Mississippi River Valley area where we could potentially see some mid to high hundreds feels like temperatures today. And here's what the radar is going to look like as we go through the day in our central plains risk area, specifically initiated along the upper plains convergence zone. We're going to notice that we will get a pretty big area of thunderstorms, specifically in a more linear mode, which will bring that threat for potentially a weak spin-up tornado, but mostly some small hail in that 1 to 2 inch in diameter range and some 60 to 70 mile an hour wind gusts. This is going to be dropped by some troughing in the area, potentially a low pressure system front, and then this dry line and pretty much weak area of convergence by the upper plains convergence zone. This would be initiated by around the mid to late afternoon and would be expected to push eastward as we go through the day and really peak when that low level jet kicks in. That's also when that threat for all hazards of severe weather would peak as well. This would be when these storms are around central Nebraska and central northern Kansas. And then after that, they'd wane pretty quickly, ending around the early night hours. And then in our northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin risk area, we could potentially see some pretty strong severe weather out here as well. This would be initiated by potentially a low pressure system, a bit of a warm front actually along the region as well. Then also, of course, some synoptic forcing. And then this could also bring the threat of all hazards of severe weather as well, but would mostly be for the threat of some 60-mile-an-hour damaging winds. This threat would start in the early afternoon and last pretty much all the way until right after evening, and then would end in the early night hours. And we could potentially see some sparse storms all the way back in central Iowa. That is why our marginal risk extends quite a bit further back today. But I think the main focus is going to be on that northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin area once again. And here are 500 millbar winds showing where that synoptic forcing is going to be today. And we can actually see that we don't have a lot of it, but there are a couple of short waves, one pushing through our southern Wisconsin risk area, definitely helping to bring some organizing shear and help to initiate our storms right there. Then another one in our plains risk area also helping with that. We also have a big high pressure system area back here in the desert southwest, helping to bring some organizing shear to those. Then our big high pressure system down here, bringing that heat dome, should also help to bring some organizing shear to our storms up here as well in that northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin risk area as well. And then here is the storm environment in our plains risk area, possibly bringing the risk of all hazards of severe weather. We do see that we have quite a bit of organizing shear today, so definitely some organized linear storm clusters, bringing that threat for some 60-mile-an-hour damaging winds. And some of the things helping to bring that threat for our 60-mile-an-hour damaging winds are going to be a 1300 downdraft cape and a precipitable water of 1.83 inches. That is also why there is that conditional threat. Seen some flooding out here today. And then for our spin up tornado threat, when that low level jet kicks in, we will see an increase of helicity and shear, but this would be mostly a linear mode, so it would only be for a couple of spin up tornadoes within that, and our storm base would be low enough for that to happen as well. But the main thing, like always, is going to be a moist environment nearing a 70 dew point and a fairly unstable environment, 3000 cape. And also our 3 cape is going to be 121, which is also increasing that threat for a couple of weak spin-up tornadoes and just general severe weather as well. And the last thing we're looking at is going to be for our hail threat. Because it is going to be a linear storm mode, the hail threat isn't really going to be that present today, but because we do have quite a bit of cape up here in our freezing level, and our mid-level lapse rates are 8.5 Celsius decreasing per kilometer, and we do have some wind veering coupled with our high bulk shear or organizing or updraft sustaining shear, I definitely do think there is some 1 to 2 inch hail in play out here in the plains today as well. And then here's our storm environment in that northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin risk area. The first thing we're going to notice is that we do have a decent bit of bulk shear as well, so definitely some organized storm clusters, and that's also going to be coupled with some wind veering, helping to accomplish the same thing. Now our storm base would be low enough, and because this will be in front of a low pressure system, and this would also be mostly when the low level jet kicks in, our shear and our helicity wouldn't be bad. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a threat of a couple of weak spin up tornadoes. Then also our 3 capes going to be quite high, which will support that, and just general severe weather. Other things supporting that threat for general severe weather are a extremely moist environment nearing an 80 dew point. That is so moist. And then also a cape pretty high nearing 4,000 as well. So just favorable for severe weather today. For our damaging wind risk, we do have a downdraft cape of around 1,200 and a mid-level relative humidity of 41%. That's pretty low, so I do think we could potentially see some evaporative cooling helping to strengthen our downdrafts today. Then also an abundance of dry air aloft, definitely helping to bring some 60-mile-an-hour damaging winds. Now for our hail threat, it's not really going to be present at all because our mid-level lapse rates are going to be below that 6 Celsius per kilometer decreasing threshold. So I think the main threat is just going to be for some damaging winds and also potentially a couple of weak spin up tornadoes, although that damaging wind risk is going to mostly prevail and be the main thing to look out for.